Hi, this is my presentation for my final paper for Senior Seminar for Communication Studies. I chose to do my paper on technology's impact on communication. Basically, I wanted to go across generations to see the differences in what people thought, how technology affected their communication skills, and if it was more or less effective depending on the impact of what people were using and how people prefer to communicate. So basically what I ended up doing was I interviewed several people. I chose people from each generation. So I started, with younger generation and older generation and went all the way through. So we had X, Y, Z, and then the baby boomers. I tried to interview people that I kind of knew, but not people that I really directly had a lot of contact with. I didn't want to have their point of view skewed. So there were some people that I knew, some distant family and stuff like that, based on how they interact with their kids now, and then some other kids that I knew through other areas of life as well. So basically what I did is I had a questionnaire for each of them, and I just asked them a few questions. Basically, I just wanted to know what their thoughts were on what they used for communication and then how they felt with it. And I'm just going to pull it up real quick too so I can get a checklist of what I had here. But basically I just asked them about 5 different questions each just to make sure I can get a consistency too going on there. So I asked them, how has your opinion on technology changed over the last 4 decades, which is really more for the older generation because they were around before cell phones were, and now we have cell phones, tablets, and this is actually what I'm recording my presentation on is a tablet. Well, I have a laptop down here as well too. And especially nowadays, basically nobody can go without a phone. So phone is the main way to communicate, main way to stay in contact with everything. So I just wanted to see how that changed over the last 4 decades and if they liked the change or if they felt it was a little distracting. And then I asked them, in what ways has technology changed or been helpful for you to communicate? So a lot of the younger people too, what I realized is they thought it was really helpful to have communication constantly, and they basically felt lost without a cell phone or some type of technology with them. Older people could get by without it. They didn't really care for it as much, but on the business side, it was very, very helpful because we could do the communication through email now, which is super helpful with work. Also, we have teleconferences, stuff like that. And then I asked them in what ways technology has been harmful to communications. Some people found that there's too much connection where you can't get away, and there's just too much distraction with that. So at work, you would have your cell phone when you're supposed to be doing something else, and you're not really concentrating. So you're pretty much distracting yourself with too much access to technology, and that was pretty much a big concern. And that was kind of across everywhere too. Even the younger kids, they liked that they had that much access, but they understood and they knew that it was too much because they could play a game anytime they wanted. They could talk to anyone anytime they wanted as long as they had their cell phone or some type of tablet with them, even at work or at school. So they had to shut that down. I know a lot of people too that I know, they have tablets for school now, so they're giving out iPads or some type of tablet. And with that, it's effective because they can use all the tools with it and they get to use it for basically every single class that they have. But they have to limit what type of access they have. So they will shut down certain apps. They won't give them Snapchat and stuff like that, so they're not going to distract with each other. But there's always ways around it too, which they've admitted they could find a way to basically distract themselves if they want to. And then another question I asked was, how has technology impacted your ability to communicate? The older generation does prefer more of a face-to-face kind of interaction, where the younger people, they'll text you. They won't even go up to the door and ring the doorbell anymore. They're just going to text you and say, hey, I'm outside. Do you want to come out and let's go? And when they're talking with each other, they basically prefer just writing. They don't really want to see the other person. They don't really care if they see them or not. The older people, they like to talk on the phone more, so customer service for businesses and going into the store is important, whereas younger people do prefer going online or fixing it themselves basically through some type of technology device. And then I asked, how do you prefer to communicate, which I kind of went over, where basically some people just want to text, some people want to talk to you and say, hey, I just want to talk this out because this could be solved in about 5 to 10 minutes, versus, a half hour, hour-long conversation through text. So those are my questions, and then a lot of the results I also went over a little bit with it too, was that there's differing opinions. There's some correlation between the change of technology and how the generations choose to communicate. So with more of the access to technology, the younger generation that grew up with it prefers that way because that's what they know and that's what they've used their whole life. Where the older generation, they have not used it their whole life. They see, or they've known other ways to communicate, such as face-to-face, I'm going to come to the store and I'm going to talk to you about this, where the other people just want to, the younger generations just really want to stay away, stay connected, but in a disconnected way, if that makes sense. They just wanted to do it themselves and not actually have to interact with anyone and find the answer. And it's okay if it was a little bit here, a little bit there, wait a half hour, get an answer, where the other older generation, the baby boomers, like to go in and just figure it out and get it done. And then what I found too is there's a little bit of a disconnect between the generations, because the older generation, baby boomers, would want to do it this way, the younger generation would want to do it this way. So when they want to come together and communicate, it was a little different because the younger generation didn't want to talk it out, or the older generation did. So a little bit of a disconnect with that. Also, the use of technology, there's a difference as well. Older generation didn't grow up with it, so they're not as used to using the equipment that we have, such as the tablets and the smartphones and even the computers that we have. So the younger generation, they're just, that's it, that's what they know. They're used to it and that's what they prefer to do. So it's easier for them to use that, where I think that might be a little bit of the disconnect with the older generation as well, where not everyone on average would prefer that because they don't know as much about it, so they're not as used to it and comfortable with interacting that way. So it's a little bit different for them. But honestly, I think, going down the road, looking at this study that I try to do here, we're going to see every generation from now on coming out preferring to use technology, unless for some reason technology goes away, which obviously we don't see that happening. They're going to prefer to use technology in their communication skills through work and school, personal life, and I think people are going to adapt their skills to what equipment we have available to us, as we've seen in this study, where the younger generation that has access to tablets and phones and all the other stuff prefer to use those to communicate versus going to somebody's house or business and actually talking to them face to face. So in the future, what we can learn from this, how to be a better communicating society in every aspect of life, personal life or work. Basically, we're going to understand who we're talking to and maybe what they prefer to do. We could just simply ask them, because like I said, on average, there's certain people that would prefer, that are in the older generation, to email and text. They really caught on with it. Younger people still might want to be able to talk in person, but on average, what I found through my study, which is a very small sample size too, so it's not much out there. If I could do it on a bigger scale, it would be probably more impactful. But basically, understanding how the other person likes to communicate and then communicating with them. So make sure that we're versed in personal communication, face-to-face, also using proper email techniques or memos or whatever it is for work, and make sure that we can get to the person, because I don't want to just send an email out to somebody and expect them to do it without checking on it and say, hey, did you get my email? Most people are like, well, I mean, I kind of did, but I just deleted it. I didn't think it was important because it was an email. But for you, that's the most important way to communicate. For them, not so much. So make sure that they understand how you like to communicate, understand how they like to communicate. So if you need to get a message across, you can do it the way that they'll actually pick up on the most effective. So basically, overall, I found out that everyone has a different learning style and communication style that they prefer, which we already knew. But with the difference in technology, make sure that we use a certain platform that goes along with the way that they would like to communicate. So if you're a younger generation person, you're trying to communicate with maybe your parents or your grandparents, maybe they want you to call them, just give them a call. It'll be pretty quick most of the time, unless they like to talk a lot, and they'll be happy that you took the time to do it the way they wanted. And then maybe the next time you're out, they don't want to interrupt you, so they're not going to call you. They're going to shoot you a text and just say, hey, where are you? You're supposed to be home in a little bit. So understanding a little bit of give and take in the communication process for each person is really key. So overall, use every style of communication we have, whether it be Snapchat, texting, email, or if it's more of a phone call or stopping in to say hi in person. and asking questions and getting it across. And being able to respond to that in the other way too. So if someone calls you, pick up the phone and talk to them. If someone texts you, send them a text back. And if somebody stops over or they prefer you to stop over once in a while and just meet them in person. It goes a long way in effective communication and getting the process across. So that was basically an overall of my project. And I would like to kind of go on with that too later on and kind of get into it more, but we'll see how that goes. So thank you for your time and watching this video, and I appreciate it.